Charles was first in line for the mRNAs and believed everything that was being pitched. He openly stated it. It's true. I took the Pfizer vaccine. I come from a family of doctors, and I've been in the medical business now for 3 years personally, and it's witnessed, firsthand from the family, the medical business for my entire life. You have to understand that when I was born, my grandfather delivered me. My grandfather was an OBGYN. The Hoskinson family has been in medicine since the 1950s. 1950s. That's longer than most people are listening have lived. So when you have that lived experience of all these people, then you tend to believe that drugs that have FDA approval are, even if they're not effective, are not catastrophically bad. That's your lived family experience for these types of things. Because if they're catastrophically bad, then what you're saying is my father, my brother, my grandfather, my uncle are actively harming people by practicing medicine because they cut prescriptions. They give people drugs. A person comes in, and I know my dad, and I know he would never in his entire existence willingly harm a human being. He's just the most peaceful person you ever met. So if prescription drugs are problematic and they're causing all this harm to people, then my father, by participating in that, is doing that. Now, there are nuances in these things. Of course, drugs are overprescribed, or drug-drug interactions are bad, and doctors don't pay attention to these things. And oftentimes, one of the first things you do as an internist when you get a new older patient is you're taking them off of drugs, not putting them on drugs, because the formulary is wrong. So there's nuances to all those things. But these vaccines, I, for my whole life, grew up, took vaccines. Hepatitis vaccine and tetanus and you name it, I took it. Measles, mumps, rubella, all this stuff. Even some crazy vaccines that you're really not supposed to get. Got them anyway. And various degrees of side effects. Got bitten by a bat once, and I had to actually take the rabies vaccine. That was really fun. So I wasn't in a mindset of being an anti-vaxxer and saying vaccines are universally bad and don't work. In fact, it was quite the opposite. So this thing comes out, and I said, wow, mRNA is really cool, because I studied it in college. And when I was thinking about being a doctor, did all the biology stuff and the chemistry stuff. And studying that in college, I said to myself, this stuff is really powerful. Personalized medicine. And when I was studying and thinking about it, all the mRNA discussion was about cancer vaccinations. So it really surprised me that that would be used for respiratory viruses. And I was thinking, okay, well, why cancer? So you take your cancer cell and you take your regular cell and you take a look at the genetic delta between the two. And then what you do is, using a computer model, you figure out how to create a vaccine to create an immune response to the cancer cells. And where and when this works, your own body kills the cancer cells. It melts the cancer away. And you can take stage 4 cancer and be cancer-free in 6 months to a year. This is why, when you look at Moderna and you look at BioNTech and all these other mRNA vendors, that all of them were founded by oncologists, cancer people, not pulmonologists seeking to cure the next respiratory virus. Okay, so then Operation Warp Speed happens, and we're doing all this different stuff. And the vaccine I was most hopeful for was actually made by Novavax, and it was a protein subunit vaccine, and it was built on a same type of concept that the hepatitis B vaccine that was approved in the 1980s was built on. You get injected with a spike protein, causes an immune reaction, and your body builds antibodies, and you move on. Pretty simple. The RNA was a little different. It comes into your cell and hijacks your ribosomes. It makes the spike protein. Your cells become molecular manufacturers for the spike protein, and RNA is unstable, so it doesn't last forever. So it seems like, while one step removed, would be a very powerful vaccine, especially given that you can modify the RNA very quickly. And so you can keep up with the rate of mutation. Now, I assumed that the science would carry its way through. It didn't. The phase 3 clinical trial, the placebo-controlled clinical trial, they vaccinated the control group, first time ever per vaccine that they did that. So we have no way of determining if the cancer rates are higher or the heart disease is higher, or any of these other things. Also, the medical establishment was forced to not allow the publication of any anti-mRNA data because it would promote vaccine hesitancy. That was the excuse that they used. You were persona non grata for these types of things. And step by step, all the things we were told, like it would stay localized in the injection site, wouldn't become transient, end up in your heart and your semen and other places, were lies. Found plenty of people where vaccine spike protein spread around and caused a lot of inflammation and other issues. And I personally have issues. I still have pain in the injection site every day. I live with that. And other people I know close to the family and in the family have had adverse reactions that they believe were caused by the vaccines. And by the way, we're not allowed to talk about them or else you get deplatformed. In fact, the very fact that I'm answering this question means there's a good chance there's going to be a chyron at the bottom of this video now about COVID-19, and this video may actually be taken down, as some of my AMAs have been. So the response, how the science was done, the lack of interest in actually trying to get to the truth of the matter, and also the fact that it didn't work to stop the pandemic, all of these things mean that I could change my mind a little bit and say that while vaccines in general are an essential tool that we've used in medicine for hundreds of years, perhaps maybe, just maybe, that this particular class of medicine has issues with it and should not be used in humans at large scale. We should take a step back. We should look at the data for the next 5 to 10 years and try to figure out what the hell happened. And if we see huge spikes in myocarditis in the young and huge spikes in aggressive cancers and autoimmune disorders, maybe, just maybe, there's a problem there. And now with Robert Kennedy as the Director of Health and Human Services, that's precisely what America is going to do. And the truth will get out. I also have huge problems with the fact that the vaccine manufacturers basically have no liability. So we paid for it. We forced people to take it. There was no consent in this matter. And then when there are bad outcomes, you're not allowed to talk about them and you can't sue. And I'm sorry, it's not consent. If you tell a person they have to do it or they lose their job, as they did to the soldiers, the special forces operators, the pilots, all kinds of people. When you tell people you have to take it and you can't travel, you have to take it, you can't even go to Starbucks without your vaccine papers. Imagine if it worked that way for sexual consent. You have an employee and says, sleep with me. No. Well, if you don't, you lose your job. You know, we call that sexual harassment. The person who does that should lose their job and become a pariah in society. But apparently it's totally okay with mandated vaccination. Okay, that's consent. And by the way, there's no informed in the consent. If you blacklist anybody from publishing the downsides to the procedure for vaccine hesitancy, then how can a person make a proper informed decision? I came, again, with the position of bias, came from a family of doctors. So I just was operating under the assumption that basic things were done and basic practitioners would follow those basic things. And it turns out that that didn't happen at a global scale. And now hundreds of millions of people may have problems, myself included, down the road. And I don't understand what you want to accomplish in your question here. Is it that I'm complicit? Yeah, the most of the world is in advocating for this. But I'm now going to suffer like most of the world. And if this does cause cancer, I'm likely going to get it. If this does cause heart problems, I'll likely suffer from that too. And I'll be right there in the trenches. It's one of the reasons why I set up a clinic, is that I'm so skeptical now of the mainstream medical orthodoxy. And it's awakened me to the possibility that the way we do things is wrong on so many different levels. And since starting the clinic and witnessing all these things in the healthcare industry, it has truly enlightened me to how poorly the American healthcare industry has handled many things, from the treatment of chronic ailments to the treatment of cancer, to how we just treat people in general. We treat them like cattle, not human beings. And that's wrong too. And I'm glad that we can finally be part of that solution and improve things. And COVID has been and continues to be one of the darkest eras in American history, and something that has permanently damaged the trust that the American people have in their government, and rightfully so.